Mending wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each. And some are loaves, and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is we do not need the wall. He is all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only in the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well, he says again, good fences make good neighbors. The runaway. Once when the snow of the year was beginning to fall, we stopped by a mountain pasture to say whose colt. A little Morgan had one forefoot on the wall, the other curled at his breast. He dipped his head and snorted to us, and then he had to bolt. We heard the miniature thunder where he fled, and we saw him, or thought we saw him, dim and gray, like a shadow against the curtain of falling flakes. I think the little fellow's afraid of the snow. He isn't winter broken. It doesn't play with the little fellow at all. He's running away. I doubt if even his mother could tell him, sakes, it's only weather. He'd think she didn't know. Where is his mother? He can't be out alone. And now he comes again with a clatter of stone and mounts the wall again with whited eyes and all his tail that isn't hair up straight. He shudders his coat as if to throw off flies. Whoever it is that leaves him out so late when everything else has gone to stall and bin ought to be told to come bring him in. The woodchuck. My own strategic retreat is where two rocks almost meet, and still more secure and snug, a two-door burrow I dug. With those in mind at my back, I can sit forth exposed to attack, as one who shrewdly pretends that he and the world are friends. All we who prefer to live have a little whistle we give, and flash at the least alarm we dive down under the farm. We allow some time for guile and don't come out for a while, either to eat or drink. We take occasion to think. But if after the hunt goes past and the double-barrel blast like war and pestilence and the loss of common sense, if I can with confidence say that still for another day and even another year I will be there for you, my dear, it will be because though small as measured against the all, I have been so instinctively thorough about my crevice and burrow. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Provide, provide. The witch that came, the withered hag, to wash the steps with pail and rag, was once the beauty Abishag, the picture pride of Hollywood. Too many fall from great and good for you to doubt the likelihood. Die early and avoid the fate, or if predestined to die late, make up your mind to die in state. Make the whole stock exchange your own. If need be, occupy a throne where nobody can call you crone. Some have relied on what they knew, others on being simply true. What worked for them might work for you. No memory of having starred makes up for later disregard or keeps the end from being hard. Better to go down dignified with boughten friendship at your side than none at all. Provide, provide. Birches. Boys play with birches. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored as the stir cracks and crazes their enamel. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust, such heaps of broken glass to sweep away you'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load, and they seem not to break. Though once they're bowed so low for long, they never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the woods years afterward, trailing their leaves on the ground like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. But I was going to say, when truth broke in with all her matter of fact about the ice storm, I should prefer to have had some boy bend them as he went out or in to fetch the cows, some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself, summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limp. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon, and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully, with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first, with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dream of going back to be. It's when I'm weary of considerations, and life is too much like a pathless wood, where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from a twig's having lashed across it open. I'd like to get away from earth a while, and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate willfully misunderstand me and half grant what I wish and snatch me away not to return. Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven till the tree could bear no more but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good, both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger of birches. The death of the hired man. Mary sat musing on the lamp flame at the table, waiting for Warren. Went on tiptoe down the darkened passage to meet him in the doorway with the news and put him on his guard. Silas is back. She pushed him outward with her through the door and shut it after her. "Be kind," she said. She took the market things from Warren's arms and set them on the porch, then drew him down to sit beside her on the wooden steps. "When was I ever anything but kind to him? But I'll not have the fellow back," he said. "I told him so last haying, didn't I? If he left then, I said, that ended it. What good is he? Who else will harbor him at his age for the little he can do? What help he is, there's no depending on. Off he goes always when I need him most. He thinks he ought to earn a little pay, enough at least to buy tobacco with, so he won't have to beg or be beholden. All right, I say, I can't afford to pay any fixed wages, though I wish I could. Someone else can, then someone else will have to. I shouldn't mind his bettering himself, if that were what it was. You can be certain when he begins like that, there's someone at him trying to coax him off with pocket money in haying time, when any help is scarce. In winter he comes back to us. I'm done." "Shh, not so loud. He'll hear you," Mary said. "I want him to. He'll have to sooner or later. He's worn out. He's asleep beside the stove. When I came up from Rose, I found him here, huddled against the barn door, fast asleep. A miserable sight, and frightening, too. You needn't smile. I didn't recognize him. I wasn't looking for him. And he's changed. Wait till you see." Where did you say he'd been?" "He didn't say. I dragged him to the house and gave him tea and tried to make him smoke. I tried to make him talk about his travels. Nothing would do. He just kept nodding off." "What did he say? Did he say anything?" "But little. Anything. Mary confessed he said he'd come to ditch the meadow for me." "Warren. But did he? I just want to know." "Of course he did. What would you have him say? Surely you wouldn't grudge the poor old man some humble way to save his self-respect." He added, if you really care to know, he meant to clear the upper pasture, too. That sounds like something you've heard before. Warren, I wish you could have heard the way he jumbled everything. I stopped to look 2 or 3 times. He made me feel so queer, to see if he was talking in his sleep. He ran on Harold Wilson. You remember the boy you had in haying 4 years since? He's finished school and teaching in his college. Silas declares you'll have to get him back. He says they two will make a team for work. Between them they will lay this farm as smooth. The way he mixed that in with other things. He thinks young Wilson a likely lad, though daft on education. You know how they fought all through July under the blazing sun. Silas up on the cart to build the load, Harold along beside to pitch it on. Yes, I took care to keep well out of earshot. Well, those days troubled Silas like a dream. You wouldn't think they would. How some things linger. Harold's young college boy's assurance piqued him. After so many years, he still keeps finding good arguments he sees he might have used. I sympathize. I know just how it feels to think of the right thing to say too late. Harold's associated in his mind with Latin. He asked me what I thought of Harold's saying he studied Latin like the violin because he liked it. That an argument. He said he couldn't make the boy believe he could find water with a hazel prong, which showed how much good school had ever done him. He wanted to go over that. But most of all, he thinks if he could have another chance to teach him how to build a load of hay. I know that's Silas' one accomplishment. He bundles every forkful in its place and tags and numbers it for future reference so he can find and easily dislodge it in the unloading. Silas does that well. He takes it out in bunches like big birds' nests. You never see him standing on the hays trying to lift, training to lift himself. He thinks if he could teach him that, he'd be some good perhaps to someone in the world. He hates to see a boy the fool of books. Poor Silas, so concerned for other folk, and nothing to look backward to with pride, and nothing to look forward to with hope. So now and never any different. Part of a moon was falling down the west, dragging the whole sky with it to the hills. Its light poured softly in her lap. She saw it and spread her apron to it. She put out her hand among the harp-like morning glory strings, taut with the dew from garden bed to eaves, as if she played unheard some tenderness that wrought on him beside her in the night. "Warren," she said, "he has come home to die. You needn't be afraid he'll leave you this time." "Oh, home," he mocked gently. "Yes, what else but home? It all depends on what you mean by home. Of course, he's nothing to us any more than was the hound that came a stranger to us out of the woods, worn out upon the trail. Home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. I should have called it something you somehow haven't to deserve." Warren leaned out and took a step or two, picked up a little stick and brought it back and broke it in his hand and tossed it by. "Silas has better claim on us, you think, than on his brother. 13 little miles as the road winds would bring him to his door. Silas has walked that far, no doubt, today. Why didn't he go there? His brother's rich, a somebody, director in the bank." "He never told us that." "We know it, though." "I think his brother ought to help, of course. I'll see to that if there is need. He ought to write to take him in, and might be willing to. He may be better than appearances. But have some pity on Silas. Do you think if he had any pride in claiming kin or anything he looked for from his brother, he'd keep so still about him all this time? I wonder what's between them." "I can tell you. Silas is what he is. We wouldn't mind him, but just the kind that kinsfolk can't abide. He never did a thing so very bad. He don't know why he isn't quite as good as anyone. Worthless though he is, he won't be made ashamed to please his brother. I can't think Si ever hurt anyone." "No, but he hurt my heart, the way he lay and rolled his old head on that sharp-edged chair back. He wouldn't let me put him on the lounge. You must go in and see what you can do. I made the bed up for him there tonight. You'll be surprised at him, how much he's broken. His working days are done, I'm sure of it." "I'd not be in a hurry to say that." I haven't been. Go look. See for yourself. But Warren, please remember how it is. He's come to help you ditch the meadow. He has a plan. You mustn't laugh at him. He may not speak of it, and then he may. I'll sit and see if that small sailing cloud will hit or miss the moon." It hit the moon. Then there were 3 there making a dim row: the moon, the little silver cloud, and she. Warren returned. Too soon, it seemed to her, slipped to her side, caught up her hand, and waited. "Warren?" she questioned. "Dead," was all he answered. Choose something like a star. "Oh, star, the fairest one in sight, we grant your loftiness the right to some obscurity of cloud. It will not do to say of night, since dark is what brings out your light. Some mystery becomes the proud, but to be wholly taciturn in your reserve is not allowed. Say something to us we can learn by heart, and when alone repeat. Say something, and it says, I burn. But say with what degree of heat. Talk Fahrenheit, talk centigrade. Use language we can comprehend. Tell us what elements you blend. It gives us strangely little aid, but does tell something in the end. And steadfast as Keats' eremite, not even stooping from its sphere, it asks a little of us here. It asks of us a certain height. So when at times the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far, We may choose something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. Once by the Pacific, the shattered water made a misty din. Great waves looked over others coming in and thought of doing something to the shore that water never did to land before. The clouds were low and hairy in the skies, like locks blown forward in the gleam of eyes. You could not tell, and yet it looked as if the shore was lucky in being backed by cliff, the cliff in being backed by continent. It looked as if a night of dark intent was coming, and not only a night, an age. Someone had better be prepared for rage. There would be more than ocean water broken before God's last put out the light was spoken. The gift outright. The land was ours before we were the land's. She was our land more than 100 years before we were her people. She was ours in many, but we were England's, still colonials, possessing what we still were unpossessed by, possessed by what we now no more possessed. Something we were withholding made us weak until we found out that it was ourselves we were withholding from our land of living, and forthwith found salvation in surrender. Such as we were, we gave ourselves outright. The deed of gift was many deeds of war, to the land vaguely realizing westward, but still unstoried, artless, unenhanced, such as she was, such as she would become. One step backward taken. Not only sands and gravels were once more on their travels, but gulping muddy gallons, great boulders off their balance, bumped heads together dully and started down the gully. Whole capes caked off in slices. I felt my standpoint shaken in the universal crisis, but with one step backward taken, I saved myself from going. A world torn loose went by me. Then the rain stopped and the blowing, and the sun came out to dry me. An ant on the tablecloth ran into a dormant moth of many times his size. He showed not the least surprise. His business wasn't with such. He gave it scarcely a touch and was off on his duty run. But if he encountered one of the hive's inquiry squad, whose work is to find out God and the nature of time and space, he would put him on to the case. Ants are a curious race. One crossing with hurried tread the body of one of their dead isn't given a moment's arrest, seems not even impressed. But he no doubt reports to any with whom he crosses antennae, and they no doubt report to the higher up at court. Then word goes forth in Formic. Death's come to Jerry McCormick, our selfless forager Jerry. Will the special janizary, whose office it is to bury the dead of the commissary, go bring him home to his people, lay him in state on a sepal, wrap him for shroud in a petal, embalm him with ichor of nettle? This is the word of your queen. And presently on the scene appears a solemn mortician, and taking formal position, with feelers calmly a-twiddle, seizes the dead by the middle, and heaving him high in air, carries him out of there. No one stands round to stare. It is nobody else's affair. It couldn't be called ungentle, but how thoroughly departmental. Two tramps in mud time. Out of the mud, two strangers came and caught me splitting wood in the yard, and one of them put me off my aim by hailing cheerily, "Hit them hard." I knew pretty well why he dropped behind and let the other go on away. I knew pretty well what he had in mind. He wanted to take my job for pay. Good blocks of oak it was I split, as large around as the chopping block, and every piece I squarely hit fell splinterless as a cloven rock. The blows that a life of self-control spares to strike for the common good That day, giving loose to my soul, I spent on the unimportant wood. The sun was warm, but the wind was chill. You know how it is with an April day, when the sun is out and the wind is still. You're 1 month on in the middle of May. But if you so much as dare to speak, a cloud comes over the sunlit arch, a wind comes off a frozen peak, and you're 2 months back in the middle of March. A bluebird comes tenderly up to a light and turns to the wind to unruffle a plume, his song so pitched as not to excite a single flower as yet to bloom. It is snowing a flake, and he half knew winter was only playing possum, except in color he isn't blue, but he wouldn't advise a thing to blossom. The time when most I loved my task, these two must make me love it more by coming with what they came to ask. You'd think I never had felt before the weight of an axe head poised aloft, the grip on earth of outspread feet, the life of muscles rocking soft and smooth and moist in vernal heat. Out of the woods, two hulking tramps from sleeping God knows where last night, but not long since in the lumber camps. They thought all chopping was theirs of right. Men of the woods and lumberjacks, they judged me by their appropriate tool. Except as a fellow handled an axe, they had no way of knowing a fool. Nothing on either side was said. They knew they had but to stay their stay, and all their logic would fill my head, as that I had no right to play with what was another man's work for gain. My right might be love, but theirs was need, and where the two exist in twain, theirs was the better right, agreed. But yield who will to their separation. My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation as my two eyes make one in sight. Only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future's sakes. A lone striker. The swinging mill bell changed its rate to tolling like the count of fate. And though at that the tardy ran, one failed to make the closing gate. There was a law of God or man that on the one who came too late, the gate for half an hour be locked, his time be lost, his pittance docked. He stood rebuked and unemployed. The straining mill began to shake. The mill, though many-eyed, had eyes inscrutably opaque, so that he couldn't look inside to see if some forlorn machine was standing idle for his sake. He couldn't hope its heart would break. And yet he thought he saw the scene. The air was full of dust of wool, 1,000, but pull so slow with such a twist all day from spool to lesser spool, it seldom overtaxed their strength. They safely grew in slender length. And if one broke by any chance, the spinner saw it at a glance. The spinner still was there to spin. That's where the human still came in. Her deft hand showed with finger rings among the harp-like spread of strings. She caught the pieces end to end, and with a touch that never missed, not so much tied as made them blend. Man's ingenuity was good. He saw it plainly where he stood, yet found it easy to resist. He knew another place, the woods, and in it, tall as trees, were cliffs. And if he stood on one of these, 'twould be among the tops of trees, their upper branches round him wreathing, their breathing mingled with his breathing. If he stood, enough of ifs. He knew a path that wanted walking. He knew a spring that wanted drinking, a thought that wanted further thinking, a love that wanted re-renewing. Nor was this just a way of talking, to save him the expense of doing. With him it boded action, deed. The factory was very fine. he wished it all the modern speed. Yet after all, 'twas not divine, that is to say, 'twas not a church. He never would assume that he'd be any institution's need. But he said then, and still would say, if there should ever come a day when industries seemed like to die because he left it in the lurch, or even merely seemed to pine for want of his approval, why, come get him. They knew where to search. A considerable speck, a speck that would have been beneath my sight on any but a paper sheet so white, set off across what I had written there, and I had idly poised my pen in air to stop it with a period of ink, when something strange about it made me think. This was no dust speck by my breathing blown, but unmistakably a living mite, with inclinations it could call its own. It paused as with suspicion of my pen, and then came racing wildly on again to where my manuscript was not yet dry, then paused again, and either drank or smelt, with loathing, for again it turned to fly. Plainly with an intelligence I dealt. It seemed too tiny to have room for feet, yet must have had a set of them complete to express how much it didn't want to die. It ran with terror, and with cunning crept. It faltered. I could see it hesitate. Then in the middle of the open sheet, car down in desperation to accept whatever I accorded it of fate. I have none of the tenderer than thou collectivistic regimenting love with which the modern world is being swept. But this poor microscopic item now, since it was nothing I knew evil of, I let it lie there till I hope it slept. I have a mind myself, and recognize mind where I meet with it in any guise. No one can know how glad I am to find on any sheet the least display of mind. Come in. As I came to the edge of the woods, thrush music. Hark. Now if it was dusk outside, inside it was dark. Too dark in the woods for a bird by sleight of wing to better his perch for the night, though he still could sing. The last of the light of the sun that had died in the west still lived for one song more in a thrush's breast. Far in the pillared dark, thrush music went, almost like a call to come into the dark and lament. But no, I was out for stars. I would not come in. I meant not even have asked, and I hadn't been. Spring pools. These pools, that though in forests, still reflect the total sky almost without defect, and like the flowers beside them chill and shiver, will like the flowers beside them soon be gone, and yet not out by any brook or river, but up by roots to bring dark foliage on. The trees that have it in their pent-up buds to darken nature and be summer woods, let them think twice before they use their powers to blot out and drink up and sweep away these flowery waters and these watery flowers from snow that melted only yesterday. Closed for good. Much as I owe the passers of the past, because their to and fro has cut this road to last. I owe them more today, because they've gone away, and come not back with steed and chariot to chide my slowness with their speed and scare me to one side. They have found other scenes for haste and other means. They leave the road to me to walk in, saying naught, perhaps, but to a tree inaudibly in thought. From you the road receives a priming coat of leaves, and soon for lack of sun the prospects are in white it will be further done. But with a coat so light the shape of leaves will show beneath the spread of snow, and so on into winter, till even I have ceased to come as a footprinter, and only some slight beast so mousy or so foxy shall print there as my proxy. How often is the case I thus pay men a debt for having left a place, and still do not forget to pay them some sweet share for having once been there. A soldier, he is that fallen lance that lies as hurled, that lies unlifted now, come dew, come rust, but still lies pointed as it plowed the dust. If we who sight along it round the world see nothing worthy to have been its mark, it is because like men we look too near, forgetting that as fitted to the sphere our missiles always make too short an arc. They fall, they rip the grass, they intersect the curve of earth and striking break their own. They make us cringe for metal point on stone. But this we know, the obstacle that checked and tripped the body shot the spirit on further than target ever showed or shone. Happiness makes up in height for what it lacks in length. Oh, stormy, stormy world, the days you were not swirled around with mist and cloud or wrapped as in a shroud, and the sun's brilliant ball was not in part or all obscured from mortal view, were days so very few, I can but wonder whence I get the lasting sense of so much warmth and light. If my mistrust is right, it may be altogether from one day's perfect weather, when starting clear at dawn, the day swept clearly on to finish clear at eve. I verily believe my fair impression may be all from that one day, no shadow crossed but ours, as through its blazing flowers we went from house to wood for change of solitude. It is almost the year 2000. To start the world of old, we had one age of gold, not labored out of mines, and some say there are signs the second such has come, the true millennium, the final golden glow to end it. And if so, and science ought to know, we well may raise our heads from weeding garden beds and annotating books to watch this end deluxe. Fire and ice. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Sarcastic science, she would like to know, in her complacent ministry of fear, how we propose to get away from here when she has made things so we have to go or be wiped out. Will she be asked to show us how by rocket we may hope to steer to some star off there, say a half-light year through temperature of absolute zero? Why wait for science to supply the how when any amateur can tell it now? The way to go away should be the same as 50 million years ago we came, if anyone remembers how that was. I have a theory, but it hardly does.